you give me 5 minutes and $5 and I can this whole shit. You know what I mean? Like, seriously.
That's good.
Thank you for titling your own episode.
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes and they go real fast. They're mental defectives.
Welcome to the Mental Defectives podcast, a show where we interview interesting individuals with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Millie Graham. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you owe me. Joined, as always, by the Hank Hill of Harleys, the gearhead with a heart of gold. It's Mr. Jerry with a G.
I'm glad to be here.
And today...
Hold up.
Holding.
Hit that like and subscribe button if you kind of dig what we're doing here. You know, just do that.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Because today we have a very special guest. He is a sober professional who can shoot under par as easily as he can get your financial future together. Make him your first and last call if you plan on kicking the bucket anytime soon. He's dropped more weight than all your favorite early 2000s rappers combined. Please welcome Mr. Josh.
Hey.
Josh, how's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good, man. And like we were saying before, I really want to get into this at length later on, but like, you look incredible.
Thank you, man.
Like, you've dropped, how much did you say?
Probably 250
Oh
pounds,
my
somewhere
God,
around
dude,
there.
that's incredible.
That's great.
My heaviest, I was about 465, 470. Now down about 215, somewhere around there. 220, 215, goes back and forth.
Hell yeah. We'll get you on the scale afterwards just to
Yeah.
verify. Josh, where are you from?
I'm from right here, man. About 10 minutes away, Westerville, where
Hell
I grew
yeah.
up. Yeah, kind of been there ever since. A little bit around the town, a little bit around Columbus, but mostly, I mean, just moved back there with my wife like 3 years ago, and it's weird. Westerville is weird because when I was a kid, I hated it because it was boring and there was nothing ever going on, and now I'm an old man and I love it because it's boring and nothing's going on. Like, it's sweet.
Is it still a dry county or township or whatever?
So it was where Prohibition started. Like, that was where the temperance movement started, was Westerville. That's why it was dry.
For the whole country.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah, for real. That's why it was dry until like 2005. And I worked at the closest bar to like Otterbein College.
Yeah.
Right
Sure.
to Uptown
Yeah.
for like a decade. And when Westerville went from dry to alcohol in like 05.
That's wild.
I did not know that.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
insane.
That's
yeah.
nuts.
You couldn't buy beer in Westerville when I was growing up. Probably a good thing, I would assume, but
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't help much, but yeah, whatever.
Sure.
So we need Westerville and like several counties around to maybe curb things for you.
And maybe some hot chicken wire and bars and whatever might have slowed it down a little bit.
So when did you pick up your first drink?
Oh man, so the very first drink I ever had was a Little King's cream ale that my uncle let me sip off of, and I was supposed to just taste it, and I hammered it, and he laughed and I laughed, and then I felt funny, and that was the first drink. But the first time I ever got drunk, like my best friend and I at the time found my parents had gotten some Jack Daniel thing at their wedding. I was like 15, so they'd been saving it forever, and I found it in the garage and we drank it like in high school. And
Before the wedding? That they were saving it for?
yeah, no, it was for their wedding.
from
They
their
got it,
wedding,
like,
yeah.
at their wedding.
Okay, I'm thinking it's some bottle they've had for 20 years. Like, we're gonna crack this open on our wedding night. Like,
No, they got it as a gift for their wedding. I assume that's where it came from. I never really asked them, I guess, but it was, had their names on it and all that, and busted it out and hammered that down. One of the other first times too was I got arrested, like the first time I was ever drunk in public. I was like 15. I was at Highlands Pool in Westerville.
Nice.
And like my buddies, they like filled this backpack full of beers and ice, and we were sitting outside the pool drinking beer, and the Westerville cops pull up, and I walk out. We walk out and look at them, and I go, we're like, wonder what they're doing here. I wonder who they're going to get. So being the
12-year-olds drinking booze out of a cooler.
being the geniuses that we were, we just walked right up to them, and they were like, were you guys just down there? And we all kind of froze. And for some reason, there was me and one other guy were the only ones that got like I got put in handcuffs and put in the back of the cop car. My parents had to come and pick me up.
Shit.
I was like 14, you know. It was I should have told me a little bit about what the future was going to hold, but didn't slow me down, I guess. It was pretty funny.
That's savage, putting a 15-year-old or 14-year-old in cuffs for...
Scare the shit out of them is what they're trying to do.
Ooh, yeah,
you know?
Mm-hmm. You know, the worst part about it was my parents had this meeting with their lawyers, and I ended up having to sit in their van while they had this thing. It was middle of summer. It was like 100 degrees. I'm hammered, and I'm sleeping in the van with all the windows rolled up, like probably 120 degrees in there.
There's bacon in there.
It smelled like a brewery. Like I could smell it. And you know, when you're drinking, you can't really smell.
Yeah.
But the whole place just smelled. The whole van just smelled like hot old booze. It was horrible.
What kind of like league did they get you with an underage consumption charge, or are they just like a scare tactic?
Just released me to them, and I mean, I was grounded for the summer. Which, you know, that was more of a punishment for my parents than it was for me, I'm sure, you know.
Oh, yeah. I was always more scared of my mom than the cops.
Yeah, for
Always.
sure.
Always. Okay, so we catch an underage drinking charge at 14, and then where do we go from here?
So it amped up pretty quick. Basically everything that everything I ever tried until like the hardcore stuff I did like my freshman year in high school to my sophomore year in high school. And then towards the end of high school, I got to the point where I wasn't really going to graduate if I didn't tone it back. So at that point I could still control it a little bit. So I scaled it back and got out of high school. And then after that, it ramped up quite a bit. But I mean, 14. So I was like a mid 90s raver kid, believe it or not. Like big Jinkos and the flowy shirts and the crooked hats.
Did you have the crazy like frosted tips or the spikes?
Oh, yeah.
Was that part of that scene?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kangol hats and, you know, invisible ball dancing, like that kind of stuff. So like I'm 15, 16 years old, like just leaving for the weekend and going to like Detroit and spending a weekend at a rave and coming home on Sunday and going to Goodell Park. There would be like a DJ spinning music in Goodell Park at like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. So we go and get like OEs and 40s of Old English and sit in the park and get hammered at Sunday morning to come down off of the weekend. And then I'd show back up at my parents' house like half cocked on Sunday afternoon after a weekend out, and they were like, "What the fuck is this kid doing?" You know, like you were a good kid a year ago. What happened? You know?
Yeah.
It was off from there. So
Are these like warehouse raves in Detroit, or like?
I put myself in some pretty scary situations, places I wouldn't go now as a grown adult male. Like I went to a rave under the bridge that goes to Canada in Detroit in a warehouse. Like, cops were there, I mean, it was all like 15 to 20-year-old kids, like hundreds of us in a warehouse in like not the best area of Detroit.
Right.
Yeah.
5 o'clock in the morning, rolling our balls off. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just like the craziest shit. I mean, we'd travel all over, and I would just disappear. I would come home from school on Friday and just leave and show back up on Sunday. I wouldn't call. Like I didn't have cell phones then, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Just bounce and like come home Sunday like nothing happened. And like my parents at that point, they didn't. I'm sure they just had no freaking clue what to do with me. You know, like they were just like, don't die, you know, like just you're gonna do whatever you're gonna do, just make sure you come home. So at a certain point they just kind of threw their hands up and like, you're gonna do what you're gonna do, just hopefully you don't ruin your life, and surprise, you know. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, my only like point of reference for that is like I'm thinking like the first Blade movie. Like the rave scene in the beginning of that?
Yeah,
like,
kind of like that. Did you ever see the movie Kids?
Oh, yeah.
So like those dudes, like that was more. I mean, the raves were like the DJs, but like my normal life was. I mean, that's a exaggeration of what it was. But it was just a bunch of overprivileged kids with nothing to do but sit around, drink beer, and get high, and that was like us. You know, it was like my group. But I mean, it was it was a lot of fucking fun.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like
definitely.
I look back on those times like really fondly. Obviously, you know, I really don't think back on like how shitty things got like towards the end and whatnot. Like when I'm reminiscing about like those times in my life, it's always the best times. But like I never think about the fact that I was like 17 and getting robbed at gunpoint and like crazy shit. I'm a suburban Westerville kid. Like I never should have been in any of the situations that I put myself in. You know what I mean? But
How'd you end up getting robbed at gunpoint at 17?
I was trying to buy a pound of weed at the 3C Food Mart on Morse Road, and the guy threw a bunch of bags of grass clippings in my back seat. He was like, "You got the money?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Let me see it." I never bought it.
Oh,
So I handed it to him, and he stood up and like lifted his jacket up and threw a bunch of bags of grass clippings on the seat, and I grabbed one and looked at it, and I'm like, I like went to get out of my car, and he was like, "Don't get out of your car." I like lifted his shirt up, and I'm like,
All right.
"Yes, sir. Thank you." It was I mean, if you're gonna pull a gun out in the middle of the day, you're gonna shoot somebody with it. If they, you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
at least I was smart enough to not get out of the car. You know.
No, you got to know when to cut your losses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kudos to that guy for even taking the time to bag up the fake grass.
Right,
Because I've been
right.
robbed like that too, and they don't even bother to do like, here's the fake whatever. It's just like, no, fuck you, I'm taking this.
I
now.
think he was just trying to buy himself a couple seconds to run, and when I like saw what it was, I like went to, and he just didn't run, and I was like, okay, well, I understand why you're not running because you obviously win.
He said, I have the gun, you
I
do
have
the
a
running.
gun.
I'm
Right.
already staying right fucking here.
Literally, yeah.
Damn. Okay, so we're raving all over the place. I'm just gonna go ahead and assume running into all kinds of vampires and vampire hunters.
Correct. Yep.
And then we do
Ryan
graduate
Reynolds.
high school.
Yeah,
Hell
graduated
yeah.
high
Okay,
school.
and then where do we go from here?
So I started working restaurant industry. Like I worked restaurant industry all through high school and all through my 20s. So I'm working restaurants. Like restaurant. I will never let my kids work in a restaurant. Like it is everything about it was. I was telling a story to one of my clients, which is hilarious. One of the other day about this dude I worked with at Ponderosa.
Oh hell yeah,
Ponderosa, baby.
Yeah,
Let's
my
go.
first job.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ponderosa.
Fuck yeah, wings all day. This dude was like 45-year-old hippie dude, and everybody I worked with was like a teenager. And this dude lived, so there used to be like an old hotel on Westerville Road, like by Morse. And this dude lived in that hotel, worked at Ponderosa and sold acid and weed to high school kids that he worked with. And I'm like, I'm thinking back on, I'm like, so that would be like now the equivalent of me working with a bunch of teenagers and selling them all drugs. I'm like, this dude was, I mean, he was cool, but like, that's kind of creepy.
That's
A
creepy.
little bit
That's
too.
creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
But as
creepy as fuck.
a teenager, like young adult, you're like, this guy's
This
living
guy's
the
oh, he
dream,
was the
bro.
Yeah,
fucking
this
coolest.
guy's awesome.
Yeah, he lives in a hotel. Fucking awesome. Like, he's so sweet. But no, it wasn't sweet. Like for him, I'm sure he's probably like, fuck, I got to sell these high school kids drugs, you know?
Oh
Yeah.
man. What kind of stuff in the restaurants? So like my experience, I worked at a pizza place in high school, and I remember like the third day I worked there, like my manager is talking about like she couldn't buy any weed that day or something. And I was like, I happen to sell weed, and I remember she was like, God damn it, the owner of this place keeps on hiring these cool ass people, and I was
yeah,
like, let's
right.
go, and then it was just like off to the races.
Yeah, I mean that's everywhere I went. I mean, restaurant industry, you work at a place for like 6 months and you run an entire career's course. Like you love it for like 2 months, and then 2 months you're just kind of getting by, and then the last 2 months you're like, I fucking hate this place, and then you go to the restaurant next door and get a job, and then it's great again, you know. So that was kind of what I did from maybe like 17 to 20, and then my uncle had moved. My uncle lived in Key West for 3 years and ran a Fat Tuesday on the island, and then moved to Vail, Colorado, and ran a Grateful Dead bar on the top of a mountain.
Nice.
And then moved back to Columbus and bought the first bar he worked at, which is Cushion's on Westerville Road. It's a big pool hall, dart bar. And I had just turned 21, and he was like, hey, do you want to come bartend at my new bar, and I'm like, I don't know, I just got a raise. I'm making like $11.75 an hour. You know, is it going to be worth it? And he's like, yeah, you should probably make more money than that. So I started working there, and I mean, I made way more money than I knew what I should be doing with it as a kid. You know, like all of a sudden I've got pockets full of cash, and it's all every single day. Like I just go to work and make a bunch of money.
Because that's a big place.
Yeah,
That's not like it's not like have you ever been there?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's not like a hole in the ball.
Hole in the ball.
hole in the balls.
Hole in the ball. Yeah. Hole in the balls.
It's a hole in the
type
balls
place. It's
place.
like a good size.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like, I mean, even now there's like 20 pool tables and like 10 dartboards and a huge bar. And my sister still manages it. And she took my job when I was asked to go elsewhere. The progression of that job was not ideal for anybody involved. But it was fucking awesome for like the first 7 years I worked there, probably. I mean, I started working there at 21. I started managing it when I was like 24. And it was awesome. I mean, I made enough money to buy my first house. I bought a house when I was 25 on an acre in Gahanna, like a really nice place.
It's like
That's sweet.
absolutely unheard of.
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
No way.
Today, like,
No way.
There's no way in hell.
I mean, I had help too. Like my grandparents gave me the down payment, and like everybody just wanted me to be a good dude, you know,
Right.
and like kind of went the opposite way for a little while. But you know, at 25, I bought my house. I was running the bar. Everything was cool. And then that's when opiates started popping at that point, you know, like I hurt myself. I was driving I had a Evo, and I was trying to pull it out of my driveway, and they drive the snow plows through and just push it up into your driveway. So I had like this little sports car, kind of low rider. I'm trying to back out, and it kind of bottoms out on the frozen snow hill. So I'm trying to push it and drive it at the same time back up over the hill, and I slipped and hurt my back. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, "Hey, there's this new pill that's non-addictive. Here, try it." And I'm like, you know, like the best thing ever. Newsflash, it was addictive. Just in case you guys didn't know. I think they might have known that too.
Right.
Don't know.
Right.
But that set it off. I mean, I was a partier up until then, like drinking and you know, doing blow and stuff like that. But it was never crazy out of control. Maybe normal people would see that as crazy. Thinking back,
I feel like we have different definitions of crazy, out of control.
There's levels
did
to
you
this
see
shit.
that come over my face?
Yeah,
when
I did.
realized
Yeah.
what I was, I was just drinking and doing coke like every single weekend, but it wasn't. It was totally
not that
controllable. That was the alcoholic in me right there.
Were you taking any kind of opiates before this
and there.
prescription? Okay,
But not. I mean, nothing.
not like a routine. Like okay,
No, I mean, that was really, and it went from little bits, and then the doctor kept giving me bigger dosages, and then bigger dosages, and then eventually, so how I stopped getting them from my doctor was he had written me a prescription for Xanax, the little purple footballs, blue footballs.
oh yeah,
And then I told him they weren't working, so he wrote me a prescription for the bars, but he didn't cancel the first prescription. So I back then they weren't all networked the way they are now. So I would go to Kroger on Wednesday, and then on 2 Wednesdays later I'd go to Giant Eagle and fill them. So I'm filling both scripts at the same time, and they call me and they're like, "Hey, we found out you're filling both these prescriptions." And I went off on the nurse, and then they cut me off at the doctor's office, and that was how I stopped getting my prescriptions, because I thought it would be cool to freak out on them, you know, and it wasn't. Didn't work out good for me.
so shocked that someone with 2 Xanax scripts would be emotionally flip out on someone. I can't believe that.
Shit. Yeah, I can't either. It was,
And they were giving you Xanax for your back?
no.
Or is this?
I was at that point, and then I started like pill seeking from
Oh,
that.
yeah.
That doctor ended up going to jail for a long time because of he was working at CVS Minute clinics and writing OxyContin prescriptions, but his son was pretending to be him and working at Minute clinics and
wow.
it was a big deal.
Shit.
But I was with him since I was a kid. Like, he was the first doctor I had after like my pediatric doctor or whatever.
Oh,
So
damn,
I've been with
okay.
him for a really long
Oh,
time.
damn.
I'm assuming he probably had some stuff going on of his own,
Yeah.
You wouldn't risk your, being a doctor to just write some kids some OxyContin scripts, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of where it kind of fell off, and then I started going to Florida. Like, I had a buddy that was going back and forth and took me down there, and then I met a guy that was doing it, and then I met some people down there, and I didn't have to go anymore. They were just mailing them up to me, and I was selling them, like that was the goal. But I mean, I was getting a shit ton of them, and I couldn't sell enough to pay him the amount that he was supposed to get for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was getting them for nothing, and still like.
Oh, this is back in the heyday.
Yeah.
We're talking like 25 cents a milligram or something.
Yeah, I really fucked that up. But
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
it was that's, and then so I messed that all up, and everything just started coming down all at once, like right around that same time. And I started getting in trouble with my bills, so I started trying to sell other stuff. Which
Are you still bartending at this time?
you could say that. Yeah, I was really just stealing, but yeah, I mean, I was bartending.
Right.
Pulling half a shift a week and
Yeah, I mean, I was
slanging out the
there.
back. Yeah.
It's funny, my uncle and I, we're still like really close, and he's forgiven me for a lot of things that I did, but he told me there were times when he would call the bar. So my routine when I would go to the bars, I used to have one of those egg pill crushers.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd put a bar and an 80 in there and crush it up and do it right before I walked in. And about halfway through my shift, I'd do it again. And then right at the end of my shift, I'd do it again. And that's how I got through my day. And he would call that last call, and he told me he would have like 10-minute conversations with me and not understand one fucking word I'd say. And he's like, "You're in there counting the money, and like it's the end of the night." Like,
Yeah.
But I didn't drink when I worked. That was always my thing. Is like I could always be like, "Oh, I don't drink. I don't drink when I'm working." In my head, it sounded like that, but it probably was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
yeah.
or
I'm not
mushmouth.
drinking. I'm just
Yeah.
doing enough like narcotics to
Dude,
like
kill an elephant.
kill an
Yeah,
elephant.
right,
Like,
right.
Sure.
I mean, I always refer to that as a cocktail.
Yeah. Oh man.
I had like a Xanax and an Oxy, throw like maybe like a Flex roll in there.
I didn't know that like you could die from that, and you can. I believe it or not.
Yeah,
At the time, I'm like, this is the best feeling ever, but you literally can not wake up from that. Crazy. But yeah, he was like, the intervention was the most like blindsiding thing ever. I didn't know anybody knew. Like, I totally thought I was flying under the
Sure,
radar.
yeah.
Like, there's thousands of dollars of money coming up missing at the bar. Like, I'm opening other nights' envelopes, like drop envelopes, and taking cash out of them so that they wouldn't know it was me.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
The
Right.
strung out fucking dude. That's, obviously. But so my dad calls me and asks me if I would come over and help him clean out the garage or something. My dad at this point didn't call me, period. Like, let alone call me to ask for help. So I kind of knew what was up before I got there. So like, I drive through my parents' neighborhood and I do a loop around the side streets, and I see like my aunt's car and my sister's
Yep.
car and my uncle's car and then my other aunt's car, and I'm like, "Man, I know what the fuck this is. I
Nope.
know what I've seen the show. Like, I know
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
know
walking
what
into,
this shit
right?"
is.
And so I walk in and they're like, we come in, we want to talk to you. And I'm like, so I hadn't had anything the whole day. I'm like sick, like, but my eyes are clear and I look normal,
Yeah.
And I go in, I sit down, and they read all their letters and tell me they love me and they want me to get better and all that. And I'm like, what? I'm fine. Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not, it's fine. But I agree to go. They sent me to Glen Bay, which is up in Rock Creek, Ohio. It's like the Hilton of rehabs in Ohio. It was nice. It was way nicer than I deserved. And I go up there and I you know, I detox and I'm there for like, I think 2 weeks is however long it took for my insurance to say I was cured. And then I come home and my parents are like, what'd they say? And I said, well, they said I need to stop doing drugs unless I have a prescription for them. And like at this point, my parents just wanted to believe me. Like they just wanted me to just like, please say something that is true. So they're just like, they're like, okay. And
which I mean, honestly sounds like a reasonable thing. Like,
sure. If you don't know.
Yeah. If you're
right.
To the uneducated.
Right.
Like, yeah, of course. If I'm prescribed it, I should take it, you know.
They had no clue about any of this life.
Yeah.
Like, that was their first introduction. Like my parents never had like that bottle of Jack Daniels was in my parents' garage for 15 years. Like there was never a beer in my parents' fridge.
Oh yes, they just went straight into the deep end with you.
Yeah. And then here comes Junkie Josh wandering in with dirty clothes on, like, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm fine. You know, this is not. But yeah, when I went to rehab, the main reason why I agreed to go to rehab is because I lost my house and I lost my car and I lost my job, all at the same time. So,
funny how that'll motivate you to go into a treatment. You know.
I'm good. I need to get. So when I get out of rehab, I move into my parents' house. 30 years old, you know, move into my parents' house. It was the first time I ever moved back home after I moved out. So that was it. You know, it should have been humbling. It wasn't. I got a job at Brio at Easton. I was serving and I was getting ready to get behind the bar. I was coming home from work and I was pseudo sober at the time. Like I had went and gotten a pain doctor and got prescription for morphine and Xanax, and I was taking them as prescribed, is I just wouldn't take anything all day, but then I would take it all at night so I could get a buzz. But I was coming home from work. I was driving on Broad Street and I went left to center and hit this woman head on and fucking killed her in the car accident.
Oh,
like she died.
Shit.
So I wake up, I wasn't fucked up when the accident happened, but the first thing the detective said when I woke up in the hospital room is like, what are we going to find in your system? And I told him, and he was like, do you have prescriptions for it? And I was like, yeah. And that's the only reason the only reason I didn't like go to jail was because what was in my system was supposed to be in my system. Right. Mm-hmm. Like total chaos at that point. Like, you know, have this car accident.
The Mental Defectives podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More Is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
And you said you were sober that night?
I was on my way home from work. I
so
worked
you hadn't
the day
hit your
shift.
daily
taken anything.
So it just was like an actual...
What the fuck?
Yeah,
like,
it was... I mean, you call it odd or you can call it God or whatever.
Yeah.
Something was there at that time. It was... I mean, who knows why it happened the way it happened. But, I woke up in the car... And I see the car across the way, and they have a sheet up over the dashboard and stuff. Like I knew when I woke up what was going on, and there was a lady standing at my window, which was broken out, and she was like, "Hey, do you need me to call somebody?" And I'm like, "Yeah, can you call my dad?" And I went to reach for my phone, and my wrist was up at my elbow, like this part of my arm was just a bag of bones, and I couldn't move. The dashboard was trapping my legs, so the paramedics and everybody get there and they have to like tuna can the car doors open because Broad Street's or Wagner's 45 and we hit head on. Yeah. And it was a suicide turn lane. So she was turning left, I was turning left. We met in the middle. Yeah. It was like 4 inches of the front of my car hit 4 inches of the front of her car. Yeah. It spun me around and she just stopped. Like it was just like she took the brunt of it. It spun me around and so they cut me out of the car. They tried to life flight me, but they couldn't land the helicopter. So they just put me in the ambulance, drove me to Grant. And I spent 10 days in ICU. They had to bring me back to life multiple times. Broken arm, broken leg, broken collarbone, all my ribs from the seatbelt. This ripped my stomach open. Probably the only reason that I didn't bleed out in the car is because the dashboard had pinned where it had ripped my leg open. pinned pressure on it because as soon as they pulled me out of the car,
It just started
just
gushing.
pouring
Yes,
out the
going.
pant leg in the
Yeah.
bottom.
Damn.
So 10 days in ICU. I spent 35 days in there straight. And while I'm in there, they're just pumping me full of shit. Like,
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
I was
Yeah.
on an 8-minute sleep schedule because every 8 minutes I got to click the little button. It was 0.6 milligrams of Dilaudid straight in my jugular.
Yep.
So 7.5 minutes, wake up, wait for it to turn green, hit that shit, and go back to sleep. It was crazy. They're giving me pills on top of it and Xannies, and like they're just trying. I don't know if they thought I was gonna die and they were just trying to make me comfortable, or they just still were on that shit at that point. I don't know.
So I was, what year was this?
This was 2010.
Okay, so I had the very, very similar experience 5 years prior to that, and the same thing, the 8-minute thing, and like, they frown upon you taping the button down. So you're hooked up to an IV with a light, and then every 8 minutes you can press it, and it opens up a little bit more.
Right.
And I was informed several times.
Don't tape it down.
Don't tape it.
That I don't know why I didn't think of that. That's fucking genius, man. Shit. Yeah, that I spent all that time. I couldn't walk for like 8 months. They had it severed my tendon, the tendon in the top of your leg, and they put me in this stabilizing cast that kept me from bending my knee. So I couldn't walk for like 8 months, like normally, anyways. Like I could, whatever, limp around, but I couldn't really do a whole lot. And then got through that. I ended up having to go through court, but it wasn't I got no real charges, like no real repercussions at all for any of it. They took my license away for 6 months, which I couldn't walk for 8, so that didn't really hurt anything. I had to pay some fines. Her family, I met with them. We talked. They forgave me there. Told me that they understand.
I mean, it's an accident. It's not like
It
a
was
malicious.
an accident.
Right.
It was just the time in my life was so chaotic.
Yeah.
It just felt like I could have, I was just so in the mix. I just blame myself for everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Especially with something like that, it's how do you not blame
Right.
yourself? I already hated myself at that point.
Sure.
Just
might as well just
fuel to
throw
the
it right
fire.
on.
Yeah.
But I mean, think how different your life would be if prior to that there was one line of coke, one joint.
Oh God.
Because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
When they run that tox report on you and they go morphine and Xanax.
Yeah.
And they go, well, here's the script and blah, blah, blah. Whatever. He's good. But if they find one extra thing in there, you'd have been,
Oh yes, yeah. I would have probably 10 years. I would assume that's what most people that if you die in a DUI accident, you get 10, 15 years in jail.
Damn.
So I would have just gotten out a couple years ago if that was the case.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy, man. But that sent everything off the rails at that point, because when I got through healing and all that stuff, that was when they cut off opiates through the doctors. So you start buying on the street, and eventually it's not always readily available, but there's other stuff that's super readily available, and that kind of took me there, and I started doing that shit, and that was not fun. It was fun for about an hour or two, and then it was miserable. But yeah, I mean, I did that. I went to rehab. Right after that, I went to there were no more fancy rehabs anymore. I went to Maryhaven.
Yeah.
I went to detox, and back then they would keep you there for however long it took for you to get to the next stage. So I spent 2 or 3 months in detox, and then went to Dan Cannon for I don't know, a month or whatever. And then I got out from there and went to a long-term treatment center, and it was faith-based. I wasn't ready for all that, but I stuck it. I didn't have anywhere to go. My parents weren't letting me back in their house anymore. I had already kind of, rode that out. So I was sure, 6-month treatment center and free rent, and try and put some shit together. Cool, I'll do that. And I did it. I graduated. They put me in. Isn't that a funny term we use for rehab?
Graduated.
Like,
Yeah.
holding my certificate and like up at the podium and shit. I'm like,
weird.
oh,
Keep your speed.
congratulations.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah, right.
oh my God. It's so funny.
At the time, though, I feel like it's like,
Dude,
you really do get that like sense of accomplishment.
You
of,
do.
Like, I started this. I finished this.
Thank
and,
God.
Like,
Yeah.
Dude, my whole family showed up to that graduation. Like my aunts and uncles, like my sister's friends, like all these people just
Damn.
really wanted me to turn my shit around, you know? And,
Yeah.
took a little while longer. So they
As we do.
As it does sometimes.
They released me and sent me to live with one of the other graduates. And I don't know what that dude was never there. I don't know what he was doing. Sometimes he'd roll in at like 4 a.m. Anyways, I was left on my own. I started working at B-Dubs on Morse Road on Cherry Bottom over there. And I started working with my buddy who had originally introduced me to dope in the first place. I'm like, that's a great dude to go work with.
oh, yeah. I got to spend
he
as
got
much
me
time with
there.
this guy as possible.
Awesome job at B-Dubs, you know,
Yeah.
like I'm right back on track. And that, I mean, dude, we were smoking crack in the employee bathroom and like the most crazy shit.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, that was chaos. That little 3-month stint of between getting out of the Destiny House and that was the craziest time of my entire life. Cause like I just didn't care at that point. Like I had already kind of resigned to the fact that I was just going to die like that, you know?
Yep.
So I'm living at this dude's apartment by myself, and kind of the turning point of what really pushed me to get sober was like, I'm at this place. I'm sick as shit. I'm waiting. My dude's like on his way to drop stuff off, and I start getting somebody's pounding on the door, and I look out my window, and it's my fucking dad. He's like at my apartment. I hadn't answered a phone call from him in like 2 weeks, and I talked to him like every day when I was in treatment, and like most days afterwards. And so
He knows what's up. And we're
Yeah.
fully back, like,
Oh,
dope
I'm
at this
fucked.
point, and like,
Yeah.
oh,
so
okay,
fucked.
got it.
Yeah.
I'm the worst I ever was. Like,
Yeah.
so bad. And I just hide in there. Like my car's out front. He knows I'm there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to the door. And he's not leaving. And I'm like, fucking leave, man. My dude's out. I'm sick. Just fucking leave. And he wouldn't leave. It was like he knocked on that door for like 15, 20 minutes straight.
He's probably thinking you're like OD'd
might
in there
be
because
dead.
I've been in
Yeah.
the same
Right.
situation.
Afterwards, that's what he told me. It was like
Yeah.
I was getting ready to call the cop. I was going to.
Right.
So I eventually answered the door, and I told him I was asleep. I was asleep. And he was like, "It don't look like you're asleep." Like I know what he was thinking.
Yeah.
He's like, "Well," he's like, "Are you okay? You haven't called." And I'm like, "Dad, I'm just super depressed. I'm struggling." Just whatever I could say to get him
Yeah.
to leave, you know. 'Cause
Yeah.
and he's like, "Well, just come to our house. Come have dinner." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, like no, like I just sent him away, you know, like, and I'm sure that was devastating for him or whatever, but like I was
You were
not,
sick.
yeah, it was different.
You got a one track
have to-
mind and like whatever
literally,
has
You
to.
have to get your shit.
So he left. My dude came. I got better, and I went to bed that night, and I got up the next day, and I was just like, I gotta come clean. So I just drove straight to my dad's house, and I'm like, you know, my dad and mom are both there, and I show up in the middle of the day. They haven't seen me in 3 weeks. I'm like dirty and not shaven and scrubby or whatever, and I just go in, and I'm like, I relapsed. Like I'm fucked up. I need help, and like literally the look on my dad's face is the reason why I'm still sober now. Like just there he is again, you know,
Yep.
like fucked up again, you know, lying, all that shit. And like, I remember it vividly, like to this day. And I swear that's probably, I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I'm still sober now, because I just don't ever want to see that or feel that way again, you know? So that was the start of it. I went back to Maryhaven, went through Dan Cannon, and then went to the House of Hope, and like really, House of Hope, cool? I can say that? Okay. Just want to make sure. That was when I really like started like trying to take everything seriously and like really, and I was a fucking mess. Like my first month in the House of Hope, I have no idea why they didn't kick me out. I was Like I overslept all the time. I was late to groups all the time. I almost fought my mentor, like legit almost fist fought this dude in the house. So I fucking hated that guy. I fucking hated him. I would probably be cool with him now, but I hated him then. Man. Yeah, I hated that dude. But so it was a shit show for like my first month. And then I don't know what happened, like that I guess it's just like being sober for a little bit and like realizing that like that place just showed me there was a different way to be, and like I wasn't hopeless, you know, like there was a chance of being able to get out of it, you know? And like I just took it really serious the whole time I was there. Well, as serious as I could, you know. There were some things that I did along the way that I was, you know, like surprised that they let me stick around, but like the recovery part of it was what was serious, you know. Like I still fucked up in normal life, but I just got out of my own way, man. Like took their suggestions. I still do that now. I just talked about it like 2 days ago. I'm like, I don't even remember what I was talking about, but I was like, that dude knows way more about this shit than I do. So instead of asking him why he's doing it, I'm just going to let him tell me what the fuck to do. And then I'm going to do it because he knows what to do and I don't. Like, I still live that way now, like all the time. It just taught me so much shit about how to live. And like, I still use like the CBT stuff that Jeff Love taught me
all the time.
Like still to this day, it's like ingrained in my brain.
Yeah, right.
But like it changed everything. Like I went to a sober house afterwards and like started working like a normal job. First time not working in a restaurant because they were like, hey, maybe you shouldn't go work at a restaurant when you get out of here. I'm like, that's probably a good idea. So I got a job and I was selling tile. I worked at the tile shop on Morse Road. Like
I remember that.
remember
Okay,
that?
so this is when we first met. I
literally,
remember the tile
at
shop.
after hours.
Okay.
This is when I was running because tile shop was right by after hours. So I'd work there until 9. So the craziest shit is I was at the sober house on Parsons. I had to be at the tile shop at 8 a.m. or 9 or whatever to open it. But it took like 3 hours on the bus to get from Parsons Avenue to there. So I'm like up at 5 o'clock. I catch the bus. I'm taking 2 transfers to get to Morse Road from Parsons. But the whole way there, I'm like journaling and reading my book and like doing shit that they taught me to do in the house. And then instead of getting off work and like going and doing whatever, laying around or feeling so like I would go to after hours, you know, and get off at 7 or 8 o'clock and I'd go hit the 8 o'clock and then I'd hit the 10 o'clock and then we go to TJ's and then if I was lucky, I'd catch a ride or I would just have to take a late bus back to High Street and kind of make my way back to the house. But I didn't give myself any time to fuck up. You know, like my day was planned from the time I woke up.
It's like a 16-hour day.
Literally.
Like waking up
Yeah,
at 5 p.m.
no
and
doubt.
like ending it at like 11:30
Literally.
at midnight after a meeting.
I knew, like, you give me 5 minutes and $5 and I can fuck this whole shit up. You know what I mean? Like, seriously.
That's good.
Thank you for titling your own episode. That's fire. That's fire. Bro, sometimes I'd be going through and I'm like, fuck, like it was a good episode, but like there's not like a good like tagline in there. 5 minutes and $5, I'll fuck this all up.
Literally, I mean, I thought,
that's
I
solid.
thought that all the time.
Sure.
I'm like, and it was, I mean, I proved it true many times. Like, that was all and so, you know, I did the tile shop thing for a while. I was in sales and my aunt owns a State Farm agency and she was like, have you ever thought about, you know, you got a little sales experience now. Have you ever thought about selling insurance? And I'm like, holy shit, like this lady is asking me if this degenerate fuck, you know, like come work for me. And I'm like, okay, like, I mean, I'll think about it. What do I need to do? And she was like, well, you got to get licensed and you got to do that. I'll pay for your licensing. You know, I'll teach you how to do this. And I'm like, okay. And luckily I never got any felonies when I was out there because you can't get licensed if you're a felon. You can get licensed, just nobody will hire you. The state of Ohio will allow you to pay them for your insurance license, but then you go try and get a job and they're like, no.
Yeah.
I've run into that a lot because I've tried to get other people jobs and they can't get hired, even like with my referral and all that stuff. So worked there for her for like 3 years. And then I left there and decided to sell roofs for a couple of years because you can make a lot of fast money. And the funniest part about that is I need just like this much accountability to get any work done, and there's no accountability. So I would go out like first week of the year and I'd book like 10 jobs, and then I'd get paid on those and then live off of that money for like 2 or 3 months and then be out of money. And then I'd have to go work again instead of just consistently working through. And that's how those dudes make money, is they work, normal hours. And I'm working 1 week a month, But I was sour. On the insurance industry, I wasn't really looking to get back into it. And then my mom got really sick. My mom had MS for years and years and years. And like she started getting really sick around April of 2020, right around there. And she kept saying like, you got to keep your license, go get your CE done. Just don't lose your license. Even if you don't use it ever again, like you worked hard for it, just keep it in force. And I didn't. I was like, whatever. She doesn't know what she's talking about. That job sucks. Like, I don't want to do that. And then she died. And then, like, which I'm not going to glaze over that. But yeah, she ended up passing away. But like a week after she passed away, I got a letter at her house from the Ohio Department of Insurance saying that they extended the continuing education time frame because of COVID.
Shit.
And I'm like, this is fucking...
That's a fucking
okay,
sign.
that's a sign.
Yeah.
So I went.
She passed and she got to work up there for you
like
quick.
Yeah, she did.
immediately, dude. Like within weeks. And
That's wild.
I don't know how the Department of Insurance had my parents' address either. Like, why did the letter go to their fucking house? It's just so weird.
Yeah.
So I didn't look at. I just did it because I'm like, that's too much. So I go to the school I went to do the insurance CE, and the guy that just bought the school worked in the industry that I work in now, and he was like, "What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "Nothing. I don't want anything to do with this." And he's like, "Well, you start looking into like retirement insurance, like Medicare and financial planning." He's like, there's 10,000 Americans every day retiring, like go get into that. And I'm like, well, I'll look into it a little bit, whatever. And then I found the place that I work at now, and I've been there 4 years, and I fucking love it. Every day as I love it more. Like, it's weird to find some place that I like feel like I belong, and like I get paid to do good by people, like I get to carry like that with me all the time, because you can be a piece of shit and do what I do, but you're not going to do it for very fucking long, because that gets out. People find out, and like you can't really build a career off of that either. But like if they know you're not just out there trying to screw them over, and like you're just helping them with what they need help with, they're going to tell everybody they know about it. And like, you don't even have to make phone calls anymore. Your phone just rings. I'm not quite at that point yet, but there are people that I work with that they don't have to prospect. Like, they just get other people telling them what,
Just the word of mouth going, and
referral calls.
But it's a huge blessing, man. The place I'm at now, like, I get to travel. Like, just this year, I've been to Chicago twice. I've been to Orlando. I've been to Scottsdale. I've been to French Lick, Belterra. Like, I didn't pay for a shit. Like, they like, I've won Chromebooks and Nikes and Ray-Bans and like all these contests and all this stuff. And like, and I get to like help people on top of it, like, what a fucking blessing for somebody like me. Like, that is crazy to me that, first of all, anybody even trusts me with their fucking bank account information. And second of all, like, the fact that they like want me to be around them and like help them, and they trust me. Like, that's crazy. Even now, like, I've been sober for a decade, and I still like am amazed by the fact that like I'm not that dude, like not that dude anymore. Like, I still think of myself as, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I still think of myself as the dude that was like sleeping on a pile of moldy clothes in a bando, like that guy. It's not the case anymore, thank God. But dude, crazy last like 5 years. after the roofing and then getting into this industry, like finding something that I'm good at and that I really like, huge blessing, man. It's crazy.
Hey, Mental Defectives.
Would you like to advertise on our podcast?
If so, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com.
So we can help you make a lot of money.
A whole lot of money. Yeah, dude, that's sick. It's a far cry from slanging drinks or smoking crack in the walk-in freezer.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And then, because we were trying to figure this out beforehand, but it's been a couple years since I've seen you. But I want to get into the weight loss journey because, dude,
Yeah.
it's not every day you meet someone that's dropped 200 plus pounds.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a hell of a feat.
yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
how. So I never got a gut. My wife doesn't believe this. I never got a gut till I got sober. Like, because I went from strung out junkie, 0% body fat, and like I got sober. It's like, oh, I guess I'll go to the gym to fill up my time, and then it was good to go. And then obviously time catches up to all of us, and you get the gut, and you're like, the fuck is this? But like, how did you end up getting? Like, where does the weight start increasing? Is this like pre or post sobriety?
So I've always been a bigger dude. Like even when I was younger, like always struggled with weight. I played soccer in high school. Like I was an athlete. I wasn't like just a little chunky kid. Like but even like my freshman year in high school, I had to lose 20 pounds before I could play soccer. Like my coach was like, before you get on the field, you got to lose 20 pounds. So like, I wrestled heavyweight when I was in 8th grade. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was just a big dude.
Sure.
And then like back and forth, yo-yoed my whole life basically. I right around 2017, I went to the doctors and I was considering like gastric bypass at the time, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna give it one more try naturally. And so I hired a trainer. I started going to the gym. I went 5 or 6 days a week for like 2.5 years straight. I lost 100 pounds. I was the strongest I ever was. COVID hit. They shut the gym down. I gained 75 pounds in like 6 months.
Damn.
And I'm like, wow, like I fucking gained back almost all that weight in like a quarter of the time it took me to lose it.
Right.
Like what? So I went back to the doctor's office. They were like, yeah, you're a perfect candidate to do the surgery. And I'm like, okay. Well, what does it entail? And they went through this laundry list. It took me a full year to get approved to have the surgery.
Oh wow!
Because my insurance like prerequisites were super hardcore about it.
And what was your weight at this time when you're like in there with the doctor talking about gastric bypass?
So the first time I ever logged my weight into MyFitnessPal was 470. So I have been heavier than that before, but that's where I go off of because that's where I know like I have the proof of what it was.
Yeah.
So that's the starting weight I always use. So I was about 470 pounds. I would say probably my heaviest, I was probably 480 maybe. But when I went to the doctor to start the gastric bypass process, I was probably 440. Maybe less than that because I'd yo-yoed a little bit after the gym closed and the COVID and all that. But they started running all the tests. It was a year of like testing, and I had to see a psychiatrist and a dietitian. And they did full body scans and blood tests and checked my lungs and heart and everything you could imagine. And I was perfectly healthy. Like no pre-diabetes, no like any weight related issues.
Wow.
But I have an uncle, my uncle owns the bar, who's 10 years older than me. And when he was 40, he was perfectly healthy, and he's not anymore. Like he's got a lot of issues with like health issues that are related to, I mean, maybe not direct, but if you were a normal healthy weight, you probably wouldn't have these same health issues. And so even though I was healthy at the time, I had a literal like blueprint of what I was heading towards if I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So I started talking to at the time, I'm guessing she was probably my fiance, maybe either girlfriend or fiance at the time. And she was pretty much done with my whole situation. Like I after my mom died, like I gave up pretty much. Like I was cool with just like laying in a dark room and eating pizza until I was dead, basically, you know, like, and she wasn't cool with that, believe it or not. Like she kind of wanted me around, you know? So she,
Imagine that.
yeah, right.
As it turns
Weird.
out.
But she was kind of like, you know, like if you wanted to like have a life, you know, we should probably consider it a little more. And like I was worried, and you know, you hear a lot of horror stories about it. You know, people going to Mexico and getting it done in a week, and then coming back, and then they just gain all their weight back or don't lose any weight in general. But again, they know what they're doing. I don't. So I just did what they fucking said.
Right.
Like to the letter, I had the book out. Like I followed the pre-diet, the dietitian, the whole nine for months and months. And it gave me the opportunity to fuck up and then fix it and then fuck up again and then fix it. Kind of like early sobriety.
Sure.
You know, it's very similar.
Yeah.
And did the so I didn't have to lose any weight to get the surgery. I just couldn't gain any weight. But he said it would be a little bit easier. So I lost like 30 pounds before the surgery. So I'm down to like 410 pre-surgery. And then had the surgery, liquid diet, puree diet, slowly introduce your shit back in after that.
Yeah.
Puree diet is horrible. Don't ever puree tuna. I can tell you
Oh,
Dude.
I'm just picturing like dumping a chicken breast in a blender.
that. It was fucking. I just liquid dieted for a month. I called my doctor. I'm like,
Yeah,
is
I
it
would-
cool if I skip puree? He's like, well, you just got to make sure you hit this and this up. Cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm not fucking blending up my cheeseburgers. Like that's not happening.
No.
It was horrible. But slowly started introducing, and I mean, it's fallen off. And in the same time frame, I went to a doctor, which is, if you can go to a doctor and pay for it out of pocket instead of using your insurance, so much better. They actually give a fuck, and they actually want to help you. Like, they actually want to help you figure out what's wrong. And shit, like, so my thyroid had been fucked up for 20 years, and I'd gone back and forth with the doctors and medications, and this doctor actually like took the time to really try and fix it. So all my hormones were completely fucked. Like my thyroid was off the charts. I was producing so much estrogen that I wasn't producing testosterone. So I'm basically a chick. Like, you know, like my cortisol's through the roof, like all this shit. And she in the same time, she's like fixing it. So I'm losing the weight because I had the surgery, but I'm also like
Getting all this shit balanced
Yeah,
out correctly.
and I firmly believe that's why I still am like losing weight now, because I shouldn't be losing. Like the doctor told me I would probably be done losing weight at about 220, 220, somewhere around there. And then I would gain a little bit back. And this is like within the first year. Like you lose 90% of your weight within 9 months, basically.
Okay.
But I'm 2 years in and I'm still losing weight. And I think it's because all my hormone levels are finally normal too. And I'm not a dick, and I don't cry constantly because my emotions are off the charts.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Like, it's just a whole different way of living. Like a lot of the things that, like, it's so similar to early sobriety. Like,
I was gonna say, as
Yeah,
you're describing it's almost like you're like, there was a big book that I followed word for word. It just sounds like getting sober for a second time.
so one of the most
Like-
one of the most awesome things that I used to talk about a lot when I first got sober is when I turned the hot water on, hot water comes out. Like that was like a blessing of early sobriety, is that I could take warm showers.
Sure.
It's so similar to that, like the weight loss, because like I can get on an airplane. Like I can fucking walk around the grocery store with my wife. You know, I
Yeah.
don't have to sit in the fucking car while she's grocery shopping because I can't do it because my knees hurt.
Yeah.
You know, like that.
Yep.
The shit that's like simple stuff that we take for granted, you know, now especially, like I can do it now. You know, like it's life changing, dude. Like every bit of it is just like every day I'm like, this is pretty fucking cool. Like I don't have to worry about where I'm going or what I'm doing, or if I park too far away in the parking lot, like I can walk to the door.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about that shit. It's completely life changing. It's probably as life changing as getting sober. Like it's just a whole different way of living. It's cool. Yeah.
Damn.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
That's so fucking
Yeah.
cool. So it's like,
So 250 pounds roughly is what I know you asked that. I took the long way around to answer it, but
no,
yeah,
I mean, that's
around
exactly
250.
like I
Yeah,
had
right.
several follow-up questions and you kind of hit on all of them. Like the parallel between that and getting sober, it's like, what kind of like, because it seems like it's an all-encompassing kind of change, like an emotional and like a mental like change. Like you noted like the not parking. That's something I would never have thought about. Like
I can go to
getting on the airplane. That
I can
kind
go
of
to Cedar
like,
Point. Like
Yeah.
I can get on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah.
been on a roller coaster since I was fucking 23 years old because I couldn't fit on a roller coaster. You know, even when I was thinner for as big as I was, I still couldn't do that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, those very simple things that you take for granted as just being a normal sized person your whole life,
Yeah.
you don't even think about when
Right.
you're a big person like that.
Right.
And like, you know, when you quit doing drugs, you just quit doing drugs. Like the easiest way to not pick up is just not pick up. But I have to fucking eat every day. You know, like if
Yeah.
I had to do just a little
Right.
bit of heroin every
Yeah,
day, I'd be
right,
dead
right.
next week.
I don't
Right?
understand how people with like a food or sex addiction, like, because it's a whole, it's
That'd be
like you said, it's
so
so much
tough.
easier. Just like, oh, I probably shouldn't do a pound of opiates a day. Like, cool. That's just a
right.
non sequitur. I'm done with it.
Right.
Like managing and like moderating is not my strong suit. And like
Right.
having to do that.
Anything that feels good or makes me not feel bad, I'm gonna do to complete excess.
Oh yeah.
And like food is a really comforting thing. It was around all the time when I was a kid. Like every family memory I have was around a table or around whatever, like big giant fat Italian family. Like that every Sunday we would wolf down as much pasta as we could because if you didn't eat it fast, you didn't get seconds.
Right.
Like, you know, you had to clean your plate. If you were unhappy, you got food. If you were happy, you got food. If you were normal, you got food. Like it was just a constant thing my whole life. And I still associate food with like reward. Even now, it's like you did a good job or good job on not binge eating today. Here's pizza. Like, you know, like it's crazy.
Sure.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Like, hey, good job not smoking crack. Here's a beer. Like it's the same idea, you know. If it wasn't for sobriety, I would have never gotten to the point that I am with my weight loss either, because even with the surgery, like people get fat again after they have the surgery too, if they don't have,
Oh, yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It happens all the time. And that was one of the biggest things that I was scared of, is that would happen. But like, I can apply simple principles that I learned in recovery to what I'm doing now with this, and it seems to be going okay. It's 2 years since my surgery. Like in 3 days, it'll be 2 years since I had my surgery.
Wow.
And I'm at like 250, in between 250 and 255 pounds down. Yeah, I got married. So she went from wanting to leave me because I couldn't do anything to marrying me, like, you know, 18 months later. It was just everything. It was just super life changing, man. And I'm super like grateful that I actually pulled the trigger on it, because I could have yo-yoed forever. I could be 54 and have AFib and, you know, all of these.
Pre-diabetes, hypertension, bad knee, all that kind of stuff. And I imagine a surgery of this magnitude, like the later in life you push that off to, the more difficult the hill to climb of losing the weight becomes.
Yeah, that's what literally what the doctor told me is like, you're healthy right now. Like
Yeah.
you might not be healthy in 5 years. So if
Right.
you're gonna do it, do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not an easy decision to do that either, because like a lot of people see it as like an easy way out, or like it's not easy, dude. It wasn't easy. The lead up, it's not easy now. Like I still want to eat stuff all the time, and like I have to actively like make choices to not do that, because it would be really easy to just chuck it and keep going, you know, go back to
Right.
the way I was. But same idea, you know, you just, if I want what I have, I gotta keep doing what I'm doing, you know.
I know that's right.
Because I remember you were talking about like food or drugs or anything, like we used to play cards a lot, and I would always invite. I would invite you all the time. Be like, oh, bro, you want to play cards?
Yeah.
Be like, I can't gamble, dude. Like, oh, my bad. 7 days later, hey, bro, we're playing cards over at so-and-so's house. I still can't gamble. Fuck, my bad, bro. And I could never,
Couldn't figure that out, huh?
remember to not invite you, and I always felt like a dick. Also, because I can't wait for my mom to see this episode because she's gonna be like, "Who the fuck is that guy?"
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know. She'll
Yeah.
recognize you.
Dude, I mean,
That's fucking.
when I went to the
Like you, even just when you walk to the door, like, because I mean, I do like we research guests before they come on, and it's one thing in pictures, like, oh, good for him, he lost a bunch of weight. And then you walk in the door, it's like, god damn,
it's
like,
just
Right.
a normal ass looking dude,
It's-
you know, like,
like-
crazy.
it's wild.
It's weird. You know, like body image, body dysmorphia, like that kind of shit. I never saw myself like a big fat guy. I always
Yeah.
saw myself kind of like a normal sized dude. And now I don't see I see myself as a big fat guy now. Like most of the time, like I
Oh,
still
shit.
like
Yeah.
it flipped where I'm
Uh-huh.
like, man, am I the fattest guy in the room? Like I always I would think
Right.
that shit when I was
Sure.
like look around the AA meeting and look,
Yeah.
yeah. And I would I'd be like, damn, I'm like two of every motherfucker in here, you know, like
Right.
just self-conscious, and like nobody really gives a shit, honestly. Like more concerned than like anything, you know, or
Right.
whatever. But I, you know, now I'm like, man, am I the fast guy in the room right now? Like, am I, you know, like,
Yeah.
and knowing that I'm not, like, but you just can't. It takes a long time for your brain to pick up that. But like, you walk down the street and you see your reflection in a store window, and like double take because you don't recognize who the person is, you know, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's just like crazy.
That's wild.
That
And
is
it's still
wild.
that's so much like the egomaniac with the inferiority complex, and like maintaining like right size. Like I'll be at the gym and like somebody next to me is doing like 10 pounds lighter than what I'm lifting. I'm like, what a fucking pussy. And then the guy sits down next to me with like 95, just like crushing him out. I'm like, God, I'm a piece of shit. I'm
such a
you
pussy.
know, or like
Yeah.
I get home from the gym, I'm like, oh, look at this sick pump, bro. I'm jacked. And then like 3 hours later, I'm like, I'm a fucking string bean noodle
Dude.
ass motherfucker.
All the time.
Like it's so crazy.
Uh-huh.
It's wild.
Yeah, that is wild. So what advice would you have for somebody trying to get sober or in early sobriety?
Oh man, shit! Don't do drugs. I mean, dude,
Solid,
just
solid advice.
yeah.
Solid advice.
I'll tell you the best piece of advice I ever got from anybody. So I had a gallbladder removal surgery. I was like 5 years sober. I'm freaking out about it because they told me I couldn't not take pills with me. They were like, it's going to be super
Yeah,
painful.
right.
You have to stay ahead of
Yeah.
it. And I'm kicking it around with one of my sober friends, and
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I'm freaking out. Like this will be the first time. And he goes, do you like the way your life is now? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, do you want to fuck it up? And I go, no. And he goes, okay, don't. And like it sounds so simple, but you just need to hear that shit sometimes. Like, just don't fuck your life up. Man.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's so much easier to stay stopped than it is to try and stop again. Like if I
know
went
that's
and
right.
did one today,
Yeah.
tomorrow it's gonna be a mess, and I'm gonna have to try and do it. I'm in day one all over again. You know.
Right.
Just stop. Just stay stopped.
Stay
that's-
stopped, yeah.
Listen to people that know more than you. Like, we have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. Shut the fuck up. You know, like, I didn't take that advice when I mean, I would comment at every fucking meeting. Anybody that would listen to me. I mean, I wanted to sound profound and like I knew something, but I still don't know shit, really.
Right.
I just know don't pick up. Don't do one. You
Yeah.
know, the first one is the worst one, I guess. And like, just listen to people that have done it. That would be like my biggest thing, I would say.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. And then what advice would you have for someone looking to start like a weight loss journey, whether it's, you know, the old fashioned way, if they're looking into surgery?
Same exact advice. Listen to people that know
Fuck
more
yeah.
than you. Like, get out of your own fucking way, man. Like, there's people out there that literally do this for a living. They're professionals at it. Hire a coach. You know, watch videos, like listen to the people that know more than you, and just get out of your own way. I mean, say literally the same thing. It's parallel. Like my recovery and my weight loss, I applied the same principles to both of them. You know, if it wasn't for the one, I probably would have never done the other, or maybe not have been as successful as the other. But I'm super grateful it was drugs first, because it was, you might not believe it, but it was probably easier to stop doing drugs than it was to stop the way I ate. Because I didn't you don't have to do drugs, but you gotta eat, you know? So,
and the food or the weight isn't going to kill you tonight or tomorrow like a drug could.
It's like cigs. Like I still smoke cigarettes, and like I know it's not going to kill me today, but it's probably going to kill me in 20 years. But if I don't see it, like you can see. That's the other thing about being heavy, is like you can see my mental illness literally when you look at me. Like being heavy like that isn't like it's not like. There's something, I was fucked up. Like I couldn't do drugs. I knew I couldn't do drugs, but I could binge eat every single day, and nobody really says anything to you when you're heavy either. Like nobody was ever like, man, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, get your shit together. But if I'm fucking ODing in the corner, everybody's going to come and say, get your shit together.
Yeah, sure.
So it was like co-signed the whole time. There was very few people that ever were like, dude, you're going to fucking die. But when I was doing drugs, everybody was like, dude, you're going to fucking die. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Like,
yeah.
I wish that there wasn't so much of when somebody is approaching you about like being heavy, like you're not high. We're not. I couldn't hide it with clothes or what. Like everybody knew what it was, but like everybody, it's like you have to be cautious about how you approach it, because
it's a touchy.
It is a thing.
You don't want to get out, like somebody record you and put you out saying you hate people or whatever.
Right.
It's not really what it is. It's like, if you're concerned, say something, but remember to say it from a good place, because you don't want to sound like you're like, you're a skinny guy telling this guy whatever. You know what I mean? Like, come at it from like a place of love or like concern. And but I wish more people would have said stuff before, like, hey man, are you okay? Like, it's not normal to be 500 pounds. Like, do you want to die today? Like, obviously I want to fucking die, or else I wouldn't have just eaten a large pizza and a 2-liter pop, you know? Like, it's so yeah, I think it was probably like, it's just hard to approach it with somebody like that. And like, even after I lost the weight and like had talked to other people, like seen other people who were in similar situations, like I don't even fucking know how to approach it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not something that's easy to talk about, even if they knew I was big, you know, like, how do you breach it without sounding like an asshole? Like, you know, it's hard.
Because I think something I've noticed, like when with doing the shows, it's like, it's, you know, when people come on with like sober people, it's easy for me to approach that, 'cause it's like, we've been there, we've been in the shoes, like we know about it. But when it's like people talking about like a different like PTSD or mental illness or something, and it's just like, well, I just don't know, like, you know, how to broach that, and especially with someone like that, I would have no idea. That's a difficult. Do you think if like your family had mentioned anything that would have impacted it sooner, or it's the same thing as like, you know, when you're 22 and your mom's like, you're a fucking drug addict, and you know that didn't work either? My family's all big too. So like, it would be like a family of junkies saying, hey, don't shoot up. You know, it's the same. I mean, you take it serious? Would I have taken it seriously if somebody was like, hey, I mean, I was the biggest one in my family. Don't get me wrong. Like, I definitely was, but you know, somebody that's a junkie isn't going to teach somebody else how to stop doing drugs. It's got to be somebody that's sober, you know? And there are like groups out there to help people that are in that overeat and whatnot. But I would have never walked into any of those meetings. Even when I was sober, I never would have walked, because there's a stigma around it. Like, as far like
I don't know if there is really, but in my head there is, and that's really all that matters to me is what's going on inside my head.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to, same thing. It was probably just as intimidating as walking into the first any support meeting I ever went to.
Oh yeah.
I remember I went to my very first ever support meeting I ever went to, and they kept trying to hug me, and I hadn't showered in like 2 weeks. I'm fucking disgusting, and I'm like, why the fuck are these dudes touching me? Like, don't get the fuck away, And like, I don't know if they do that at the other ones,
Right.
But either way, I'm like, this is weird as fuck, Like, thank God I didn't not keep going because I probably would have somebody different sitting on the couch today or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
No one's gonna hug you here. I can't promise that Chris, our producer, isn't gonna try and pinch your ass on the way out. But I mean, that's just the price you pay when you come on.
Right.
Literally the reason why I came.
I knew.
Hell
it.
yeah.
I knew it. Well, Josh, thank you so much for being on here. Before we get out of here, you were telling me before we started filming that Cushion's was the worst pool hall in the tri-state area, and that you wouldn't be caught dead going there. What did you mean by that? It's the Mental Defectives podcast. It's Jerry with the G Milligram. Special guest Josh. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Like and subscribe.